My next questions relate to the use of the Kingborough Sports Centre. Is Council aware that as of the end of this month, volleyball will no longer be held at the Sports Centre?
Mr. Smee.
Through you, Mayor, there has been some discussions with volleyball in relation to a hire request that they put in, that we're unable to accommodate their request for the particular night they want. We have offered them alternate nights, and it's a question for Volleyball Tasmania whether they want to take up the offer of the alternate options that we've provided.
Thank you. So I believe volleyball has been held on a Tuesday night for 5+ years, and that Volleyball Tasmania did not find out until February that their user agreement would not be valid past the end of this month. Why did it take so long to let this organisation know that their long-standing sports night would no longer be upheld?
Mr. Smee.
Through you, Mayor, so volleyball submitted a request for hire. That request for hire was not confirmed pending our negotiations with basketball in relation to their roster requirements, and unfortunately those roster requirements are quite complex, and it did take some time before we were able to get back to Volleyball Tasmania. I do acknowledge that that was not an ideal situation, and communication could have been improved.
So whose user request was received first, volleyball's or basketball's?
Mr. Smee.
Through you, Mayor, we don't allocate on the basis of first income best dressed. We allocate space at our courts at the Sports Centre in relation to a number of factors. I don't know who submitted their request first, but as I indicated, that's irrelevant to this particular situation because we don't prioritise on that basis.
So moving on to netball, netball has had a user agreement for Tuesday nights on courts 1 and 2 for a significant period of time. They've now been moved to courts 3 and 4, which is not the appropriate size for a netball game, which is why volleyball is now not being held at the Sports Centre after the end of this month. Why was netball moved to courts 3 and 4?
Mr. Smee.
Through the Chair, the situation relates to our older courts where the run-off distance in the older courts is slightly less than what is the optimum size for either netball or basketball. In this situation, we had to prioritise the higher level of competition being played, and in this instance that was basketball, with the netball competition being of more at a social level, and hence it was considered appropriate that the level of sport being played was not that it required the full-size optimum courts, whereas basketball did require that for their higher level of competition. That's not to say that the courts are in any way unsafe. They are some centimetres short. It's not a significant difference.
And moving on to gymnastics, I understand that gymnastics has also had a long-standing booking for its state competition at the Sports Centre, which it is no longer able to have in the same place it normally has because basketball is being played in that indoor site instead. If the Kingborough Sports Centre is prioritising basketball as an anchor sport, why is gymnastics not considered an anchor sport?
Mr. Smee.
Through you, Mayor, gymnastics have their own facility. They very occasionally seek to hire one of our multi-courts. In this instance, we have a block booking from basketball, which is our anchor tenant, and to bump that block booking for a one-off gymnastics event was not considered to be appropriate. Our manager of the Sports Centre has worked with gymnastics to come up with an alternate option and made some concessions in relation to access to the sports centre, and my understanding is that alternate option is now one that is satisfactory to all parties.
So moving on from there, it seems like this community facility is prioritising some sports over other sports. We've recently approved a future directions plan for the sports precinct, which I was under the impression was about encouraging equity in sport and access to that precinct. And the question is there anything in that future directions plan that accounts for capacity issues inside the sports centre, and is there a plan to build more courts?
So the manager at the sports centre of the sports precinct, and through this is including the vision statement, is the concept of having the current outdoor netball courts converted into an indoor stadium. So an expansion of the floor space. All of your questions tonight have been about what is an increasing demand and a stagnant supply of court space. And what people are fighting over is court space in all instances. Every decision that has been made, that Mr. Smee has outlined, has been made on the basis that the decisions are about getting the most number of athletes onto the court. And in every single one of those decisions, more athletes are able to get onto the court.
Thank you. And why is the decision being made to prioritise getting a higher number of athletes onto the court over more variety of sports for ratepayers?
Well, I think we put the community at the heart of everything we do, and getting more people into the sports centre for longer is a very good outcome for the Kingborough Sports Centre and athletes. In the occasion of basketball going into Tuesday nights instead of volleyball, there'll be 4 hours of basketball as opposed to 2 hours of volleyball, and there'll be twice as many people on the court as there were at volleyball. So there'll be 4 times as many athletes on the court on a Tuesday night as a result of the change that's been made.
But there'll be no volleyballers on the court.
That's correct. And so we treat everybody fairly, whether you're a volleyballer or a basketballer. So if you've got more people, 4 times as many people, with a demand for access to a court, I think the decision was the right one.
Thank you.
Councillor Wass.